This video is meant to review the basics of adding fractions, or I guess in this case, subtracting fractions, because the fractions will have different signs, which means we're going to have to make use of the scoreboard. And being that the numbers or the fractions have different signs that we're adding, we're going to need to make sure those fractions are in different columns. And when we are ready, we will have to subtract the fractions from each other. These fractions further will have unlike denominators, so we'll need to find a common denominator so that we can get set to add or subtract them because they're different signs. And we will need to borrow potentially along the way. So without any further ado, let's get started. So first thing first, I have this problem, negative 5/6 plus 3.5. It's already an addition problem. I do have the numbers of different signs. So set up our scoreboard, and we will go ahead and put our negative fraction on the left side, 5/6. We'll put our positive fraction on the right side, 3.5. And we know we will be subtracting those numbers because they're on opposite sides of the scoreboard. So when we do that, we want to make sure that we subtract these numbers based on putting the bigger, and what I mean by that, the number that has the greater absolute value, putting the bigger fraction on top. So in this case, our 3.5 will go on top, our 5/6 will go on the bottom, and once again, we will be subtracting. So as a reminder, when you add or subtract fractions, you need a least common denominator. So we have to think about what is the smallest number that both 2 and 6 go into. And in that case, it is 6. So our 5/6 is all set to go. That's already having the denominator that we need. Our 1/2, we need to kind of scale up by multiplying both the denominator by 3, because 2 times 3 gives me 6, and multiplying the numerator by 3. 1 times 3 gives me 3. So we all understand that 1/2 is equivalent to 3/6. Do not forget, as you do this, that your top number is a mixed number, so make sure you rewrite 3.5 as 3 3/6. Once again, we're going to have to subtract because I had these numbers in different columns. Okay, so we're going to have to subtract, but now we're going to get into some borrowing. And this is where sometimes students forget how to borrow. So we're going to have to borrow from the whole number piece here. We're going to have to borrow from the 3 of our mixed number, which means I'm going to reduce that from 3 to 2. And what I'm borrowing is an entire group of 6. So I'm borrowing 6/6, adding 3 more to it, and now it becomes 9/6. And now we're okay to be able to subtract because my numerator in the top is bigger than my numerator in the bottom. So now let's just start subtracting away. So 9 minus 5 is my numerator, is 4. Don't forget the denominators just carry through, so 4/6. Don't forget the whole number piece. 2 minus nothing is 2. And we're almost done. We want to obviously make sure that we remembered what the sign of our answer is. Well, the bigger number was positive, so that's our sign. And it won't always be the case that when we add or subtract that we get an answer that is fully reduced. So we have to look at the 2 and 4/6, and I should see that I can reduce that further. So that becomes 2. And since 2 goes evenly into the 4 and the 6 of the fraction, it becomes 2 and 2/3. So you are all set. So let's set up one more. Once again, we're using the scoreboard. We have our negative side, we have our positive side. We have 4 3/4 on the negative side, 6 3/8 on the positive side. Our bigger number is positive, so I won't forget to circle that sign as a reminder. And we can now begin to set this problem up as a subtraction problem. Subtracting the bigger number, and I mean that from an absolute value standpoint, minus the smaller number. So we look to see what our common denominator is, our least common denominator, and it is 8. So the 6 3/8 is all set to go. But the 4 3/4 needs to be converted. So 4 times 2 is 8, so 3 times 2 is 6. So 4 3/4, when we adjusted it for the common denominator, is 4 6/8. Once again, we need to borrow. This won't always be the case, but I did give you 2 examples where we do need to borrow just for the practice. So borrow from the 6, drop it down to a 5. And just think about it this way. You're borrowing a whole group of these 8s, which means you're borrowing 8, which is the amount of the denominator, plus 3 more of the numerator. So that gives you 11. And you are all set to subtract. So subtract your numerators. 11 minus 6 is 5 over 8. Your whole numbers, that's always the easy part to forget. 5 minus 4 is 1. Check your sign. So when we are all done, we should have 1 and 5/8. So I think both of these problems set things up sufficiently for you that you can follow this process to solve the remaining examples you see, and we will continue practice